I really like this clip I'm going to play for you today. Remember back when it leaked that Donald Trump referred to countries not like Norway, presumably countries with brown and black people, including African countries, as shithole countries. And I can say that now because the president said it. And how Trump doesn't want them coming to the United States, but he would just love to bring people from countries like Norway to the United States as immigrants. And the meeting that this was said in was about immigrants from Haiti, El Salvador, and some African countries. Trump later denied having said anything negative about Haitians, but he never denied calling African countries shithole countries. This is just the best. Trump recently hosted the Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari at the White House. And they did one of those news conferences outside the White House where a press corps takes turns asking questions to Buhari and to Trump. And the Nigerian leader was asked if he and Trump discussed that time when Trump used, quote, vulgar language. The reporter didn't say when Trump called African countries shithole countries, but when Trump used vulgar language to describe African nations, and it was as good as you can imagine. Buhari is a real diplomat. He dodged the question very professionally. He questioned whether that is even something that has been confirmed because he didn't hear Trump say it. And he basically gives Trump an out. And remember, the question wasn't to Trump. Trump chooses to jump in and say, we didn't discuss it, but basically restates that he stands by the comments that he is accused of having made. Take a look at this clip.
President Buhari, I want to ask you, you're the first leader from sub-Saharan Africa to visit President Trump here at the White House. Did you address his reported comments from earlier this year when he reportedly used vulgar language to describe African nations?
Well, I'm very careful with what the press says about others and myself.
Right.
I'm not sure about, the validity or whether that allegation against the president was true or not. So the best thing for me is to keep quiet.
We didn't discuss it. And you do have some countries that are in very bad shape and very tough places to live in. But we didn't discuss it because the president knows me and he knows where I'm coming from. And I appreciate
That's clear.
that. We did not discuss it. Mr. President, you can ask a question.
That is just the best. We didn't discuss it. And listen, there are shithole countries in Africa, so there's really nothing to discuss. This is more of an admission that Trump did say it, right? And it's very interesting to me watching a skilled diplomat next to Trump, the Nigerian president, clearly a skilled diplomat, gives everybody an out, right? By saying, I don't know what was said. And at that point, they could have moved on. And Trump chooses to jump in, answer a question that wasn't directed at him, and ends up once again lending the story more credibility. The Nigerian president's answer was nuanced, it was tactful, and Trump just fell for it completely. And there's also this very ignorant American perspective that Trump espouses when he says things to the Nigerian president. You do have some really tough countries that are in bad shape, as if that has anything to do with the Nigerian president who's president of Nigeria, right? Like, aside from this entire thing being sort of silly, Africa's huge. And mentioning to the Nigerian president that you do have some tough countries in Africa, it's like saying to the Mexican president that there are some really tough countries in South America. What on earth does he have to do with that? Or saying to Justin Trudeau that the Americas really have some difficult countries. Nigeria in the context of Africa is actually doing quite well, not that Trump would necessarily know that. And the idea that President Buhari has a connection to or sort of like representation of the poorer or more desperate areas is pretty silly. And it's just part of that hyper-normalization we've been talking about. We're used to the inappropriate behavior to such a degree. Even this little detail, like, can you imagine another president saying to the Nigerian president that their shithole country comment was logical because, listen, the continent that you're from has some really difficult places on it. And I also, by the way, we don't get to talk about African politics that often, but I'm actually really interested in African politics. There's a new UN report that projects that by 2050, Nigeria will be the third most populous country on the planet. And I am very interested in the potential future of Nigeria as a world powerhouse. There's also the question of oil drilling in the future of Nigeria. And I think it'll be very, very interesting to see Africa, an African country, experience sort of a mega growth period the way that China and India have. So I know we don't get a chance to talk about that much on the program, but Nigerian politics and the Nigerian economy is super interesting. I assume Trump is not really up to speed on that.
Even now, they have a very large population. I think it's like 180 million people.
Huge.
Yeah, and it goes to this idea that Africa is just this vague, amorphous thing. Trump probably didn't realize it was a continent and not a country until just very recently.
Yeah, which, listen, Sarah Palin also didn't know that, right? Didn't she refer to Africa as a country and not a continent? I think that's where that entire thing started. Okay, discuss this with us on our subreddit, if you so please, at davidpakman.com/REDDIT. Next, Jason Murphy returns to the program to talk about universal basic income. We'll talk about negative income tax rates. We'll talk about job guarantee programs. Great interview coming up with Jason. Today's program is made possible in part by Futur. Futur is a social forecasting game where you compete with other players to predict the future. And it's built on the principles of what's called a prediction market, a scientifically proven way of using the wisdom of the crowd to create more accurate predictions about future events. Prediction markets have been shown to work much better than other forecasting methods like polling or expert analysis in many cases. And Futur has actually taken the concept and turned it into a fun, easy-to-use social game. You open up the Futur app and you'll see a whole range of forecasts covering topics across the board, from politics to sports and everything in between. You can check out my predictions and follow me to get updates on my profile, which is linked to in the description if you're watching this on YouTube. Futur is a great tool to find out more about the world, improve your forecasting ability, show off your prediction skills to friends, and even better, when you make predictions on Futur, you're helping to create more accurate forecasts for everybody. Their mission of creating better predictions is great. And actually going in there and seeing how well you can do at predicting the future can be kind of addicting. Go to futur.com, sign up, and start making forecasts. It's free, and it's available on both Android and iOS, as well as on web browsers. And that's FUTUUR.com.